We have Andy McGuire, who's the VP for Mobile Innovation of the GSMA. This is the Association of GSM Mobile Operators. And we have Smeeta Hirani from Microsoft. She does a Windows Mobile business. And so they'll be giving a short presentation, and then you can ask questions afterwards. And then we'll do the presentations afterwards.
Great, thanks Luis, and thanks for having us. First I'm going to ask either Jonathan or Luis or someone else to give us the hook or the cut, because we can go on and on. I'm pretty long-winded.
So how much do you want? You have 5 minutes each? Or
you can take 7.
Yeah, it could be, whichever. And what I'll do is I've got too many slides, but I will then, I'll send it out. Yeah, I'll just email it to you guys and you can distribute it.
Great.
So I want to introduce everyone firstly to the GSMA. Does everyone know who the GSMA is? GSMA is the Global Trade Association representing over 750 mobile operators. We are, other than maybe several large governments, we're probably, I think, the most universal or international organization around. And in many cases, I think we probably have even a greater footprint than many governments do, or at least openly say they do. Some basic statistics there. Again, I'm just going to go quite quickly. This is our association board, an active board, very active board. As you can see, all very C-level executives, primarily made up of chief executive officers or CSOs. We also do get some CTOs on there. The board is made up of 24 mobile operators, the 13 largest by subscriber base, and then an accompanying 11 that rotate every other year. Our board members, you can obviously, I think, recognize some labels here, and there are probably others. Telefonica O2, everyone is aware of. Telecom Italia is actually very involved here on campus. But then others such as Erascom, which is a very innovative operator out of Egypt and in other countries in the emerging world. They actually just entered into an agreement with Kim Jong-il to develop the first mobile network in North Korea. So again, kind of we'll call it a very adventurous entrepreneurial spirit going on at Erascom. As you can also see, obviously it's quite a footprint. One of the things that the GSMA has recently embarked on, and this was started last July, and it's an initiative that I head up, is the mobile innovation market. Essentially, we've got a situation in mobile today where there is a tremendous misalignment between true operator needs, and the operators ostensibly have a good feel for what the market really wants, and then what's being developed in labs across the world. It's not just technology, by the way. In fact, I think technology is the easy part. It's business models. It's how do we do business together. This is a swelling ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that, the legacy of mobile operators, and including a big sponsor here, is that you can be, you're the biggest fish in the sea. You can behave in a certain manner and essentially get your way. Well, the world has changed, and it's changed for the better. Mobile operators, and I think a good example of this is if someone had described the iPhone to you, the business model around the iPhone 2 years ago, and said that AT&T and others would be carrying this, people would say there's no way that an operator would sign up for that. They did, and it's obviously become a big success. And it's also been quite successful for AT&T. They've given up some revenue on one end, but they're as far as a customer acquisition play, it's quite an amazing success story for AT&T. So the mobile innovation market was created to create an alignment between operator needs and really what's being developed. Okay, and it's not technology for technology's sake, and it's not just voice and data and SMS, because those days are over. So what we've done is we've got an environment in which we are addressing a need. We hope that we'll get investment dollars coming back into mobile by putting supply and demand together. Unfortunately, what we see today is a lot of venture capitalists, angel investors, as well as private equity groups. They understand the reality and the importance of mobile, but unfortunately, the role of the incumbents, this kind of legacy traditional behavior, in which you've got big operators that frankly, they're not built for speed. They're just massive organizations. It's not a criticism, it's just a reality. So what we're trying to do is create an environment in which we can put supply and demand together, facilitate communication, collaboration, and hopefully commercialization. And with that, we hope investment money will follow. It might sound Pollyannic, but in working a lot with the investment community, they're all for it. I mean, they really are on board with this. It's not that they want to say we're ignoring the operators, but it's just that, you know, unfortunately in the last couple of years, behaviors have dictated that they do so, but they are coming back on board. So moving very quickly, the mobile innovation market, right now it's purely events driven. We are actually going to be events and awards driven. I've got an example here of something we recently did in Israel. In fact, one of your, I guess you'd call him predecessors, Hugo Baha. Do you know Hugo? Hugo heads up mobile products for Google. He actually worked with Sandy at the Media Lab. He's an alum, lives in London now. He helped us out. We actually had Hugo, a Google executive, sitting on stage at the Microsoft R&D Center in Herzliya, Israel. So we think it was probably a bit of a first to have that type of cooperation. But if you see, and I just want to call some attention to the logos here because it's really what we're all about. You've got Carmel Ventures, Patango Ventures, Sequoia Capital. It's hard to see. Below that, Orange, Microsoft, Google, Amdocs, and then below that, some trade associations and media groups. What we're doing there and what that's representative of is what we're all about, and that's getting this broad ecosystem. And again, it's continuously swelling and getting people to work together. And hopefully, on our event side, we offer thought leadership sessions as well as an awards competition in which we're trying to, on a global basis, discover the best in mobile innovation and project those innovations, those ideas, and business models. Again, business models are very important to the broad operator community as well as the partner community or vendor community, companies like Microsoft. It's a tournament style format right now, and I'll just pass through this very quickly. You know, very similar to what you see in maybe a March Madness, a World Cup, where we have regional tournaments, knockout phases, and then we will be crowning a mobile innovation champion in Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress, which is the world's largest telecommunications event. It happens annually in Barcelona. It's a GSMA event. Right, and I'll just quickly go over the 5 awards categories that we're looking after, right, or looking for right now. Most innovative true mobile startup, and I think that's where, pardon me?
1 minute.
1 minute, all right. So, I'm going to get into the development fund really quickly because I think this is important to everyone in the room. The development fund is another initiative within GSMA. Some of my colleagues manage it. It actually is all about connecting the unconnected or bridging the digital divide. It's something which we work very closely with the Clinton Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the IMF, as well as local development agencies. It's not about, frankly, it's not about charity. It's doing good is doing good business. And so it's empowering people, giving them the tool to enhance their lives, enhance their experiences, and frankly, build businesses. We actually, there's a man on campus, Kamal Kadir. I'm not sure if people know Kamal. Is an MIT grad. He founded a company called Sell Bazaar. It's essentially a Craigslist in Bangladesh, and what he's doing there, it's amazing. Yes, you can do kind of the typical house for rent type of thing, but you also have many cases, and frankly, the primary driver is for how does a fisherman know where to send his catch for the day. If he's going to walk 10 miles and he knows that the price of fish in one area is 50% higher than the prices in another, it's better margins for him. It creates a better scenario for his family, and then we see villages and the villages improving. So we've got 3 billion people using mobiles today. It means we've got another 3 billion ready to connect, and I think that's the buzzer. So it's about it. Not a good auctioneer. I'll get this presentation.
Yes, we'll upload it on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do that because we're all.
Yeah. So sorry about that.
It's a boss computer. But we
Do you want to do questions now, or does Smeeta want to present, and then we'll stand up here? And how do you want to?
That was just a 7 minutes for him, so.
I mean,
Oh, do you want to do questions now?
I mean, let them have
Yes,
them.
yeah,
Otherwise,
it's
they'll be
coming
finished.
back.
Yeah.
we're not going to have you back sometime, but, you know.
I think you sort of alluded to it at the beginning, but do you see kind of mobile service basically going the way of the internet? So like I can go anywhere in the world and open my laptop and get my email. My phone doesn't work because internet is standard worldwide. But phones, you have to have an operator, you have to have this contract, you have to do all this garbage that you don't have to do for the internet. And I mean, at what point do you think the operators will sort of become conduits of information the way that they are for the internet
Okay,
traffic?
so a couple things. Firstly, with GSM carriers, you can actually go. Now you have to set it up with your carrier, and it's primarily for fraud protection, but you can take your handset and I can go anywhere in the world and make a call. GSMA, we actually started, or we came about with the primary charge of creating an environment that's completely interoperable. And so you see, when you see cross-border or cross-carrier SMS, that's GSMA function. Roaming is another one that we are very much in the centerpiece. So to your question about will we be able to have a scenario in which I've got a 3G handset or a 4G handset, which probably under the current financial conditions won't be, there were some predictions for 2011 we'd start to see some ubiquity with 4G. I think that's going to get pushed out a few years now. But yes, most definitely. In fact, we just announced with Intel and Microsoft, Lenovo, an initiative around a mobile broadband trademark, and we're working with many carriers on this as well. So it's essentially letting you know, just like you have the Intel inside, what do you want to call it, the logo on your computer. This is letting you know that anywhere you go, you can connect to the internet using the mobile network. The difference though is that it's not going to be configuring your computer to see if you can log on to the Wi-Fi connection or something like that. This just picks it up, it recognizes it immediately. It's very low maintenance, and frankly, it's not about all of us here in this room and on campus, in which we've got probably 2 to 3 to 4 devices that can connect to the internet. It's about the people that really haven't had that opportunity to, we're illiterate people. I mean, they're not going to be able to function and operate a machine that doesn't have a really low-touch experience. So yes, most definitely, that's what we're after, and that's what's going to be truly empowering about this next wave.
That's what this class is about.
Yeah, exactly, and it's bridging the digital divide, connecting them. There are lots of cliches, but at the end of the day, we feel that it's about lifting people, and it's not charity. So, any other? Did I answer the question, or?
Pretty much. I guess it's just a matter of time, because right now, basically nobody who provides internet service charges per volume of use, like for airtime, for minutes that you're using the internet. They charge you a flat rate, and then you get on the internet and you can buy things and you can look at advertising and you do you transact the money with service providers. So it's basically, are you saying that it's just the technology is not quite developed enough to make it cheap enough to charge people just like a flat rate and just for infinite usage, and just have the applications basically built on top of that infrastructure?
Yeah, it's not a question of technology. It's business models. I'm going to be very open in that this is an industry that earnings per share. I mean, certain things, our business models do dictate the way things run. You're starting to see, you saw flat rate voice models come in 1998, 1999. AT&T fired the first volley, no roaming and free long distance, and then everything collapsed. I mean, you're seeing all bundling in with SMS. When this is going to happen, the flat rate data plans, I think market forces will dictate that. What I don't want is it to be the product of heavy-handed kind of regulatory interaction. I think market forces should
I would even add that, the VoIP aspect of it, especially doing voice over IP, right? That's going to be a big, because a lot of roaming revenue comes for these carriers, really come from the international roaming aspect, right? So there's a big barrier to entry from a voice standpoint, right? If I can go to a hotspot and make voice calls now, it cannibalizes my own cellular business that's there, right? So there's a lot of the forces that are working against that. But I would suspect over the next few years, you'll start to see some flat rates across the board, whatever, if it's internet or voice or whatever you choose to be.
Okay, so we just decided that we'll just do 2 groups this week so that we can have a longer discussion period.
Sorry about that.
No. Actually, I think the students would be happy.
Yes, you do. You're the one playing. I'm not going to say sorry.
We did it because we believe that students will be very interested in what's going on with what you're presenting, with what Smeeta is presenting.
Okay.
So what basically is saying is that we can have a little bit more of time with you guys
Okay.
and discussions.
Sure. All right.
I'm assuming the students are actually happier because they can ask their questions, spend more time discussing,
I think there's some
and
questions
you
there.
don't have to present today.
All right.
Separate into groups. So, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the energy one exactly?
Yeah, we actually, let's see if I have a slide. I don't have a slide about that, but what I can tell you
I'm sorry, what was the question?
about the energy. So,
Energy, yeah.
so energy, and this is part of our development fund initiative. So I won't be able to get into too many specifics. Right now, in many emerging growth or emerging market countries, 60% of the operating expenses to maintain a base station that's off the power grid come purely from diesel. I mean, if you think about what's going on with, we all know that oil prices are high, but then if you think about actually having to transport that diesel to a generator that's off the grid, it becomes very, very costly. So what we're doing is and we've got a couple of trials that we've got set up. I believe one is actually in Uganda, one's in Namibia
Yeah.
with Microsoft
That's right.
around wind and solar power infrastructure. It's an infrastructure play, purely about wind and solar power right now, but we're not going to limit it to that. It's just what that seems to be the areas, or those seem to be the areas in which there are partners that are developed enough in their technology and do have some economies of scale in order to, not just once we have successful trials, hopefully deploy on a broader basis pretty quickly. Just like anything else, it's pure economics. Scale is very important. Solar and especially wind, I do know that those, the turbines today are still quite expensive, but if we can start getting a critical mass, especially in continents like Africa, we expect the pricing to come down quite quickly. And I can provide more information about any of this. Yeah?
On the same chart, M services, can you talk a bit more about what you guys are thinking about in that area?
Yeah, certainly. M services is, let's see if I have anything about that. Unfortunately. Yeah, so M services, mobile services, it's actually one of the things that Smeeta is going to talk about. It can go anything from mobile finance, in mobile money transfer and cross-border remittance, as well as something that Smeeta is going to talk about. It's a midwife project that Microsoft is doing in Namibia, and it's about really, it's again, trying to create a situation in which there is greater information about the market and then lifting that market over time. So the M services, right here you have, what is that? It's a picture of, looks like a medical technician. We have actually, in conjunction with Accenture, we have actually had projects in Africa in which a village's phone has been the primary data point for tracking HIV rates, HIV, disease state management, things like that. So and reporting that back into the capitals and getting that up into the WHO and other organizations. So it's very, what's the other cliche? Think globally, act locally, and it's that type of principle where it starts at a village and it cascades out, or it flares out and up into the capitals and back into many major international organizations. The UN is another one with whom we work quite closely.
So is the model of VC, is it a fund, or how are you guys going about that?
Well, around this, we're doing it in several different ways. We are actually working quite closely with companies. We've publicly announced Western Union, Visa. There's some other banks with whom we're working, although I think that unfortunately what's been going on the last 6 weeks might preclude some of these banks from being able to, from investing certain things. But we are working in creating business models and again empowering people. It's not VC based, meaning it's not a GSMA VC, it's not a Microsoft VC. But if we can empower an entrepreneur in one of these local markets, introduce that entrepreneur to someone that's an angel investor, and it's really, in many cases, it's not $500,000 or $1 million, it's $25,000 or $15,000, and it's very, very early stage seed capital that with which they can gain traction and build their network from there. So M services is a very generic term, and again, I can provide some more explicit slides. Mobile finance, if that's an area of interest, let me know, or mobile health.
So one of the examples, maybe I'll just speak to this.
Yeah.
I don't have a
So
slide on
maybe,
that.
were you going to present slides? Or maybe this is a good segue
The
to your
Namibia
presentation.
piece, I don't have a slide on, I can just speak to it.
Okay.
But I've got a few slides on just basically, the slides I have is showing how Andy's GSMA's mobile innovation market, how that applies to a real Synctel network, and how we've used that as a framework to create some instant commercial models for operators. Those are the two pieces that I was going to I was going to touch on.
Okay, do you want to do that now? Or?
So yeah, if
why
you-
don't we
if
do
there are no
that,
more
and then
questions.
We can ask questions to either of you, or is that a specific question right now?
Well, for either one of them, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Answer.
Okay, why don't we do the presentation first? And then,
Yeah.
and then
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Excellent. So the question that you had you had that question, right, around M services. So one of the things that Microsoft is doing is this project in Namibia. In Namibia, and I did not know this until yesterday actually, that it has the largest mortality rate of infants in that region. So the project was actually created very simply from a very simple, looking at what technology exists today. So not creating something massively high tech, but looking at what technology exists today in that market. How do we take what exists to make it very simple for them to connect to the two folks that actually can make decisions about certain things that are happening locally? So like Andy was saying, think global, act local approach similar to that, where we have an SMS toolkit that actually an entrepreneur in Namibia took that from us, which is essentially a free B really, that we created an SMS toolkit. And he created something on top of that basically does a very simple SMS messaging on a Windows mobile device. And has a camera that takes pictures of rooms and sends it to the head office, and they give directions back. And as a result, there was a dramatic decrease of mortality rates since then. So there's some charts that I have, which I don't have on this deck right now, but it's things like that, as to looking at what exists today, how do we use what exists today to create something compelling to raise their quality of life. Just like Andy mentioned Kamal, who was an alum from here, to how can you actually help the fisherman who's actually going to sell something, and he's at the mercy of the seller, whatever they want to buy, because this fish is pretty much dead, and it's perishable items, right? So you're not going to get as much. So there's a bit of an exploitation that could happen. So he now has an opportunity to put it in a marketplace, similar to a Craigslist, thinking that, hey, if I put this out there, who's going to bid highest for that, and let me get that. And so it's actually a very fair trade for them. With a very simple technology. It's not rocket science, but very simply, how do you increase the quality of life? Let me switch computers now, because I don't want to work off of course, the Apple. Oh, I am connected. Oh, I was like, all right, very good. So, this is already up. The middle may look familiar to you, just because Andy just presented this piece in the middle, which is all the awards and recognition that comes from GSMA. So, me at Microsoft, so I'll speak a bit about my background. Smeeta Hirani, industry manager, look at the global telecom business for Microsoft. And my charter was to see how I can drive innovation, but I need to create some structure around it. So we actually worked together and we said, all right, GSMA has a great program called the Mobile Innovation Market. How do we take that as a structure to create something compelling for an operator that's trying to target a certain market? But the goal is, again, commercialization here. It's not just to create something cool. And of course, that's a really important thing for Microsoft, to create the cool stuff. But then how do we take something cool and actually have real customers paying real dollars? Really, a lot of focus is over here on the operator commercialization aspect. So I think one of the largest assets that Microsoft brings to the table is its extensive partner community. So we have over 70,000 plus ISVs, 6.5 million developers that are on our network. It's not just Microsoft products, because if you look at Exchange or look at Live Properties or Media Room or any of these others, they're pretty vanilla. It's pretty horizontal. But how do you take that, connect it to our ISVs and ecosystem, and really where the innovation is? How do we combine that together and to create something compelling for an operator? That's really the charter that I took on this. The operator that we worked with was Singtel in Singapore. And if you remember Andy's slide, he had 5 categories of those: most innovative application in the consumer market, a vertical app, blah, blah, blah. So we chose one just to kind of be very tactical in our approach to create some real dollars, right, on real application that's actually going to be used. So that's essentially the approach we took. We took Microsoft's Software Plus Services. You'll see here all the Microsoft stuff. Our operators stuff, because our operators also bring a lot of assets, right? You've got telco operators that have spent billions of dollars in getting the network in place and having billing relationships with several vendors, right? So how do we take their assets, our assets, and then essentially really where the innovation lies, which is right here. I'm very passionate about this space, which is where you guys come in. You guys are kind of, the innovators thinking about how do we do things differently and more innovative. How do we take all that, use this as a framework to go through commercialization? So lots of text here. Basically, bottom line, Singtel. Singtel was one of the operators that I worked with. And why Singtel? One, why mobile? Mobile is where the action is. So cool space. I've been in the space for about 17 years. I was at Nortel prior to that, at Motorola, IBM, T-Mobile, and the gamut, right? So a lot of mobile interest for me personally, and of course the opportunity as well. So we said, all right, let's work with Singtel. APAC is very powerful. I mean, you've come from Philippines, you know how that is there, right? Anytime I step outside of US, I'm just amazed at the way the mobile phones are used. Like my mom, when I go back to India, and my mom will call like the guy who has the cart with the fresh vegetables, and she'll call and say, what's fresh today? And she'll say, all right, I've got the bananas, blah, 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 blah. All right, send me 1 kilo, and it's there. I'm amazed at the usage of how mobile technology has taken over. You know, simple things like that, right? So with Singtel, we said, out of the 5 categories for GSMA's mobile innovation market, let's pick one. Let's go down very, 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 very down and tactical. We picked the most innovative application in the vertical market. Singtel picked supply chain management. I know, not too sexy, but that's what they picked. And then further on, they focused on transportation. That was the piece that they picked. And what we went through essentially is a recruit process. We said, all right, this is the RFI. Microsoft is looking for ISVs, developers out there that can hone into the supply chain management to win this prestigious GSMA award, and not just win the award, I have the chance of winning the award, but to go through commercialization with Singtel. So that's their draw, right? ISV now can step up and say, all right, it's not just a cool service that I can use in the market, in my lab, but really something that's going to be used by real customers at the end of the day. So that's the pull for the ISVs, right? Microsoft says, great, this is great. I'm going to penetrate more of Microsoft, assets essentially, and operators all doing the same thing. Singtel's service, I think that one of the core assets that networks have today is the location information, right? You've got a lot of information that sits in the network, which is inherent in your network. You've got it. Nobody can touch it, because really, if you look at GPS devices, yes, they give you accuracy, but if you connect that to a cell ID type of information that's within and inherent in your network, you can create something pretty powerful. I've been talking about LBS, I don't know, for 10 years now. Haven't seen a single execution of it yet, because it is pretty complex. And the complexity is not so much about technology as much as it is, like Andy was saying, about the business models. Who makes what? How do I pay my ISV? Who's going to do certification? Who's going to do testing of these applications? So a lot of the questions that we have and gaps that we have today are really along the business models and not so much about the technology. So let me just wrap this up. Basically, we went through this process and we picked 2 ISVs that are now, one of them actually made it, which we just found out yesterday, to the top 5. So you saw that pyramid that Andy showed. So we're going to be in Macau next month, where we'll be, one of the ISVs is going to be presenting their solution, and hopefully they'll get picked. We'll see. I can't judge because I'm going to be a little biased, so I'm kind of disbarred from putting any inputs there. But basically, the plan is for them to then grow and see if we can get to the bottom, at the top of the pyramid. That's the goal. Go ahead.
Can you just share a bit more on what the solution is? Like, what is it? Is there
It's track and trace. Sure. So the 2 ISVs that are looking at it, the requirements that were provided to them were the following. They must use Windows Mobile and or mobile broadband PC. Mobile broadband PC is essentially a laptop with 3G part of the package. Must use one or the other. Must use one or more Microsoft services, right? Of course, ISV will have its own solution. And so with the 2 that we picked, V3 and Promotus, and they must use LBS. So location-based service from Singtel must be inserted as part. So the experience needs to be very unique to Singtel customers. So that's an important piece. The application that actually won the two awards for us personally were track and trace. So let's say a guy is driving down transportation, trying to deliver some things. There's a ton of communication that needs to happen between the 2 to realize where he is, if he's arrived, not arrived, signature, doc signs, those kinds of deals. So basically, that enables a lot of the paperwork that's going to be taken away from that. And it's going to be a very automated service for them. And the location is not going to be something that they need to punch in. It's very simple UI that lets you know where you are and when you'll be arriving. So I know, it doesn't sound too crazily innovative, but from an operator standpoint, it really saves them a ton of investments in R&D. All right? I speak very fast.
You have a question,
So-
Mike, if you wanted to add?
Yeah, you can go. You still have 3 minutes for questions.
There was one right here with the app.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have.
You hinted at SMS being obviously something temporary for the developing world, even as a solution. But what do you see as the time frame for like ubiquitous internet, 3G internet access in like a rural village in India, plus the devices that would be able to use fast internet?
Okay, so I think SMS is as a primary revenue generator for an operator.
Revenue, just as a
Right, I just wanted to clarify my first statement. So SMS is here. I mean, and what Smeeta was actually describing with Kamal Kadir, and we see a lot of mobile finance applications are actually based on SMS. Now, the ubiquity of devices and connecting 3G and off the grid and things like that, that really, we saw a presentation today that Andy Lees, who heads up the mobile program, all mobile for Microsoft, was saying that by 2011, what were the statistics? They see a 77% growth in smartphone.
77.
Yeah, I don't have the exact figures. I think, unfortunately, the 3G, ubiquity of 3G, I think is still, especially if you look at China and India, two massive geographies with obviously tons of people. I mean, each is putting on about 6.5, 7 million subscribers onto a network on a monthly basis. I think it's going to take a couple of years still, but at the same time, we're going to see that Moore's law take effect. What was the quote today? That if you can get the cost of a device to $200 or lower, you see a tremendous spike in the uptake. Obviously, $200, yeah, $200 in the developing world is a lot of money, but I think we're going to start seeing more and more compression of that. We actually at GSMA had a program where we created a handset for $30 price point, and that was 2 years ago in coordination in conjunction with LG. 2 years ago, $30. What will it be tomorrow? I think we can get it to $5 or lower. And then how do you get it in the hands of a user? Subsidization, there are all sorts of price, business models there. But for the operator, it's a win-win because they've essentially gotten someone that the acquisition cost is quite low. You've empowered someone, and obviously for the user, you hopefully are going to be providing the user with an enhanced lifestyle, and then exposing that user to the applications and services that people in this room and here in Cambridge and wherever else are creating. So
I have a question, and so you were talking about Microsoft services for these things. So, can you give an example of what kind of services that you can use with mobile?
With mobile,
Like you were saying that the condition for the was that they have to use a Microsoft phone and Microsoft services.
Yes, and Microsoft Service. So Microsoft Services could exist between consumer or business. That's the way we look at it. So in the consumer assets, you look at live, you look at media room. Media room is essentially our IPTV assets, right? So a lot of the consumer stuff sits there, like Zoom and all the other pieces. On the business side, we have Exchange and SharePoint and CRM and the others, right? So the next piece we're looking at now is social networking and the overlap of where you are, where your friends are, where your subscribers of operators, and seeing how we can get maybe live IDs and create something.
So are these services that, do you need to pay to use these services, or are these services that you can just use, like if you write an application that uses these services?
So it depends on how the operator wants to do it, right? I think a lot of the consumer stuff will probably go through ad-funded models, right? And maybe a lot of that is free if you use the service and so forth. I think on the business side, you have some leeway to charge for it, right? Like CRM applications and so forth. But the business models are going to be where the creativity lies right now. A lot of people are looking at it. But ad-funded is really picking up.
All right. Any other questions?
Quick question here. Would you be looking for open source solutions, or?
So when we go through it's open source, you mean like Linux and.
Yeah.
So in my domain, no. But in Andy's domain, I'm sure you would be open to.
Yeah, it's open source. Obviously, Android is no one knows what's going to come out of that. But it's obviously something that's interesting. You see Limo Foundation as well is trying to get some traction. There isn't a lot of funding behind that. So I think open source is interesting. What we always have to be mindful of is that, and this sounds like a cop-out, but it's very true, is that QoS is still really important, especially in the developed world. And we're not going to tolerate certain experiences that with our mobile that we carry in our pocket has become, unfortunately or fortunately, I shouldn't say that, get that off the tape. We've become so attached. Fortunately, we become so attached to our mobile that we're not going to tolerate the same experiences that we do typically have on a PC. So, open source is, I think it's great because it allows this tremendous amount of creativity, but there's got to be some level of policing of it. And when I say policing, it's not Big Brother, but rather just emphasizing quality, because it's very, very important. And I'm talking more about the applications, not just really OS.
So the term we use at Microsoft is managed network mashups, right? So we create, this mashup term comes up from the Web 2.0 piece, but in order for operators, because they carry a lot of brand equity, right? If Saint or whoever, AT&T is offering something, when we call AT&T, customer care is big. All those pieces become like hazy if you don't have some structure. Anyway, I'll stop.
No, thank you.